Hey dudes! So I'm not in my normal filming space right now, as you guys can probably tell. I'm actually in my stream room right now against one of the walls. I don't know, I get bored of filming in the exact same spot every single time, so I figured I'd change it up. I don't necessarily know if I like this spot. I feel like it looks a little bit boring. I mean, I put my tree here, but I don't know. I don't think it does anything. If it's just one video, it's fine. Today, I am going to be reading a few more of you guys' paranormal stories. I've already picked about 3 out, I think. I think that's all we're going to be reading today because all 3 of them are actually pretty long stories. And the 3 stories are actually from people who actually come to my stream quite often, so I just wanted to make sure I read their stories. The first story I'm going to be reading is from Ken's. Ken's is somebody who drops by my stream pretty frequently. She also sent me a bunch of pictures along with the story, so I feel like it'll be like a nice visual to the really long story. So my first story is about my old house from when I lived in New York. That house was built in 1922, so almost 100 years old now. It has been in my family for about 65 of those years, and we bought it off of my great-grandparents who had to move into assisted living when we moved into that house back in 2005. I was 6 years old when we moved in, and a lot of stuff happened that went right over my head when I was little. First things first, we had an unfinished cement basement that literally had a corner that was just dirt. My sister and I used to joke that a body was under there, and eventually my parents filled it in because it was so random and weird. But the entire basement was always freezing. Where I lived in New York had summers that only got up to the high 70s if we were lucky, so we didn't have any AC. Even in the summer on a hot day, the basement would feel like Antarctica. The attic was also unfinished, and it was full of boxes of old things that my great-grandparents had collected over the years. There was a typewriter, a school desk from the 1920s, tons of old books, and other stuff of that nature. As we started to get older, my sister and I would play in the attic and go through all of the stuff we found. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures from this point, because at the time the first iPod Touches had come out and those didn't have cameras. Anyways, we found this really weird old book. To this day, I can't find it on the internet at all, even after a ton of searching. It was just a bunch of symbols and words in a language neither of us recognized. The covers were blank and it didn't have a title page, so I'm not even sure of the name of it. We were super into the dragonology and wizardology books and liked to pretend we were wizards and had pet dragons. Oh my gosh. Me, my sister, and my cousin used to pretend we were mermaids. I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's kind of the same thing. I'm just trying to relate. One day when we were in the attic, we decided to light a candle and cast a spell. We ripped a paper out of this book and just held it on top of the candle, just far enough away that it wouldn't catch on fire. The smoke literally drew a frowning face and what either said no or go on the page. It scared the shit out of us, and we blew out the candle and went to show our mom. Of course she didn't believe us and assumed we did it ourselves to play a prank. This was the start of all the weird shit that started happening directly to us, and I'm 100% certain we did some type of ritual or something that released a demon or spirit or something from that book. After that, my sister would wake up with huge scratches on her body and had no idea where they came from. One morning, I woke up with a huge handprint on my stomach that looked like someone had slapped me. What did you guys summon for real though? I assumed I had just fell asleep on my hand and it left an indent, but the handprint was twice the size of mine and way bigger than anyone else's in my house. We used to have 2 cats as well, and they would sit at the bottom of the attic stairs and at the top of the basement stairs and cry. If we opened the door, they wouldn't go down or up the stairs, but just sit there and stare. We stopped playing in the attic and basement and threw that book away, and that definitely helped stop whatever was happening. I still kick myself for throwing that book away, because I'm old enough now I could probably do the research to figure out what it was. But up until we moved, things would disappear and we'd later find them in the most random places. I used to play basketball, and I would always find my basketball shoes in the weirdest spots, even when I knew I placed them in my closet. Most of the time, we'd find stuff that disappeared in the attic or basement, almost like whatever was in there when we were little wanted us to go back to playing in those spots. Hands down, one of the creepiest experiences of my life, and I really hope whoever moved in after us doesn't have any of the experiences that we did. The part where you said that it wanted you to go back to playing in those spots freaked me out. I don't know, just something wanting you to go back to that spot. I don't know, if you know that you wouldn't put your basketball shoes or something other in that spot, but you find it in that spot. Oh, that freaks me out. I don't like thinking about that. So Ken's goes on to say, okay, the next story is about a haunted cemetery that I used to live by. It's called Guernsey Hollow and is actually considered one of the most haunted places in the United States. Long story short, the place is haunted by a girl that was stoned to death by other people in this cemetery in the early 1800s. If you Google the cemetery, a ton of info comes up if you want more specifics. But of course, knowing this, my early teenage self and all my friends would constantly go up there and try to catch some paranormal stuff. This cemetery was literally in the middle of nowhere and took about 20 minutes of driving in the woods on dirt roads to get to. It was creepy because there was cell signal, but as soon as you got to the cemetery, there was nothing. To get into the cemetery, there was just a little rope off, and we'd climb over that and walk back through an old fence into the actual cemetery. I'll attach photos of it from during the day just so you can get an idea of what it looks like. In the middle of the cemetery was a giant white cross that was infamous for people taking pictures in front of. I attached some pics of me and my friends there that we took. There's also a saying that you have to kiss the cross to stop things from following you home. Not sure if that was true or not, but anytime we went, we always did it just to be safe. Now, since this was from the 1800s, there weren't many gravestones, and what were still there were mostly broken and couldn't be read. The first few times I went, nothing really happened except for a few orbs we caught in pictures. Probably my 5th time going, we had some weird stuff happen. When we got to the cemetery, my friend's car lights just went out. He had a new car, so it wasn't like he just had one go out. It was both. This caused us to have to park a little less than a half mile away from the cemetery and walk up the road to it. Once we went into the cemetery, my friend's phone flashlight stopped working as well. I didn't know if whatever ghost was there just didn't like my friend or what, but literally everything he had with a light stopped working. We always brought in regular flashlights just in case, because we knew that spirits and stuff can mess with lights and technology. His flashlight stopped working as well, but everyone else's phones/lights were fine. Just to see if anything was there, I took a picture, and I shit you not, there is a clear as day face in this photo along with a huge orb. There is a picture attached. Looking at that picture to this day gives me goosebumps. We were all extremely freaked out and felt it was best to leave. When we got to my friend's car, it took us like 3 tries to get it to start. Eventually it did, and we zoomed out of there. On the way home, still in the middle of the woods, we drove through what we thought was fog. But it was only that one spot, and there wasn't any fog anywhere else. I'm convinced whatever was in that photo followed us and is what we ended up driving through. Of course, we went back a few days later, and we heard what sounded like a woman sobbing way back in the woods. We didn't go back that far, because I'm not that dumb and it was pitch black, lol, but it was terrifying. My friends and I would call ourselves ghost hunters and would visit the most haunted places in our county, but nothing was ever as creepy as that cemetery. Looking back, I am so thankful that nothing ever followed us home. Okay, and then she also attached pictures, and I'll put this one up on the screen. And she says, this is not my pic, but we always went at night, so I didn't have one during the day. In the back, you can see the cross. Here's the pic of the figure I captured, literally a face. And if you look back by the trees, you can see like 2 orbs, like kind of like where their eyes is in like a jaw and a neck. It literally looks like a face, just kind of like standing there, but like just a neck and face. But I'm wondering, what is the fog? Like, what is that fog there? That's creepy. And then she also put pictures of the cross. She said, I crossed off everyone's faces for privacy reasons, but here are some examples of pics we would take with the cross. Thank you so much, Kenz, for sharing this with me. I was extremely interesting, and I'm so glad you're not in that house anymore, because if it was trying to get you in a certain area of your house, I can only imagine what it would have done like later on when you were more interested in the paranormal and you knew more about it. Like, it definitely probably would have started to go after you more, which is creepy. The next story actually comes from my Twitch mod. So if you guys don't know, I stream on Twitch. I feel like I say that a lot, but like, if you don't know, I stream on Twitch. And on Twitch, you can mod people, like make them a moderator, which means that they're kind of like a helper. They help out with your stream. They can ban people. They can like use commands and stuff like that, or like you can program commands for them to do like anything just to like help you out. And this comes from one of my mods. Her Twitch name and the name that people will most likely recognize her as is Stile, but her actual name is Tessely, so this comes from her. She says, when I was younger, I used to visit my grandparents a lot. They lived in a very small town in a home that my grandma built almost entirely herself. She always seemed to have some kind of carpentry project going on whenever I'd visit. Sometimes I'd help her, or I'd find something to do around the house by myself. Sometimes in the very early hours of the morning, when the sky was still that soft gray of dawn, we would take the short drive to my grandparents' farm. They already lived in a small town, but their farm was even farther out, which at my young age felt like a whole different world. There was this old, run-down house on the property that I always imagined was like a mansion, even though, looking back now, it was a pretty average-sized 2-story farmhouse. I swear there wasn't a single time I saw that house where it wasn't hidden in shadows, making it look charred black as if burned in a fire. I don't remember what happened to the house now, but it had been there for years before my grandparents bought the property. The house was always something I equally feared and admired. Even as a kid, I had this weird fascination with abandoned buildings and secretly wanted to go inside and look around, but my grandma would never allow it. Well, one day, when they were attending to other farm business, I snuck away because curiosity had been building inside of me for so long that I couldn't take it another day. I remember I could hear every sound like it was amplified times 10. Every crunch of a leaf, every kicked pebble, the wind blowing through the trees, and then the floorboards as they creaked under my sneakers. I stopped in the doorway because even though I was insanely curious, I was still terrified inside. A coldness I've never felt before seeped into me the moment I put my first foot just inside the doorway where I stood. I remember wrapping my arms around myself and shivering as if it were winter already, and looking around the room in front of me. It was dark, but I could barely make out a broken staircase to my left and a couple doors to my right. I took another step inside, eyes darting around as this feeling of terror threatened to shove me right back out. It was different though, because I could feel it like something physical, strong hands gripping me and pushing me back. But I stayed where I was, 1 foot in, 1 foot still frozen in the doorway. Everything looked burned inside, and I wondered what happened to make it this way. As I was about to place my second foot inside the house, a gust of wind came out of nowhere and knocked me over onto my back, followed by a loud scream or screeching sound. I lifted my head, breathing heavily, and tried to scramble back and out the door when I caught sight of a strange figure in one of the doorways. I screamed but was unable to move now, paralyzed with fear. The figure looked like the shadow of a tall woman with long hair covering most of her face. I couldn't make out any features. She seemed to float above the floor as she came closer and closer. I let out another loud scream and buried my face in my hands, unable to look but still unable to move. That was when my grandpa snatched me up by my arm and pulled me out of the house. As he dragged me out, yelling loudly at me about running off and going inside that house, I risked one last look inside, but nothing was there. I wasn't allowed to go back to the farm after that day, so I never saw the house again. I liked that story a lot because it literally sounds like a movie. The way she wrote her experience literally sounds like a movie script. Like, it's so visual, and like I felt like I was like in the story when I read it. I have read that one before, by the way, but I don't know, it was just too good not to share. I don't know, I hope you guys liked it because I loved it. Thank you so much to Stile, aka Tessely, or Tessley, aka Stile. Either way, thank you. The last story today comes from Shay. She had wanted to send me this for like a long time. Okay, so she says, I should start by saying where I live. Currently, my husband, his name is Cole, is in the army and we live on a military post. When we were touring our house, nothing seemed off, and I was excited to move to really look into the history of our neighborhood. There is one thing that I should note, and it's that we had a little pull-down ladder to get into the rafters/roof of our house, except there was no string to pull down. It was just cut out in the ceiling. I've never lived anywhere that has like a pull-down ladder like that, but I feel like those are always in every scary movie or like story or TV show or anything where something happens in a house. Those like pull-down ladders are always in that story. In those stories. For the first few weeks of us living here, everything was fine. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. As we got comfortable in our living situation, things began to happen. One night, about 3 to 4 weeks into living here, I woke up sometime in the night/very early morning to someone walking on our roof. I remember thinking it was strange because it sounded as though a child was on the roof. The footsteps were light, as if a child was trying to sneak around. I dismissed it though, because I was half awake and our roof was at an angle. It's highly unlikely any unskilled person would be able to get on the roof, let alone walk around. Since Cole wakes up earlier than I do and is gone most of the day, I said nothing to him. A few days later, Cole was taking a shower, and as he got out, he noticed a small handprint on our window with long, thin fingers, almost not human-like. That's a fear of mine right there. Oh my god. He yells for me to come and check it out, and when I look at it, the first thing I think is one of the kids put the hand on the window when they showered, and it is fogged up again. However, when I bring them in, they both reply saying we didn't touch the window. I assume one of them is lying, so I put their hand against the window where the handprint is, careful not to mess it up, and to my surprise, neither hand fits. My oldest child's hand is too big in the palm, and my middle child's hand is completely too small. The whole situation freaks us out a bit, and we don't know what to do. Those are the first major things that happened. Many insignificant things have happened over the last 2 years of living here. Mostly things like our cat playing with/crying at things that aren't there, and our dogs barking at our staircase. There have been several times where we have seen the thing or things that have been haunting us. Typically, it shows up as our children. That's even worse. It could be any time of the day and we will look and our kids are walking down the stairs. When we go to talk to them, they say nothing and keep walking, so we follow them into the kitchen, and when we reach the doorway to the kitchen, we notice no one is there. I hate that. I hate that. And I'm over here thinking that something mocking my voice and my dad's voice is like bad enough. I can't imagine just like seeing my dad walk down the stairs and then him not being here. I don't know what I'd do. So we will call to them, and they always are either in bed asleep or upstairs in their rooms playing by themselves. To add to our situation, every time we walk upstairs, any one of us will get a super eerie feeling as though someone is watching you, or they will jump out at you. Cole often has to go on camping trips to do exercises for work, and I'm left alone with our kids, which isn't terrible, except I can never sleep. I remember the very first time he left for more than an overnight trip. I kept waking up having weird dreams, but I could never quite remember them. I am someone who never remembers their dreams. That being said, I woke up during the night around 3:30 or 4 a.m. screaming and crying because I had just had the most realistic dream of Cole being killed by something I couldn't see. It took me forever to go back to sleep. When I was finally asleep, I heard someone walking on my roof again. I jolted out of bed and turned on my light, and I stayed awake for the rest of the night. In the morning, I walked into the hall to look for the trap door I mentioned in the beginning, except it wasn't there. There was no cutout in the roof and no sign of anything where the door should have been. What the heck? Since I couldn't talk to Cole, I couldn't explain anything that had happened. While Cole was gone, I checked with my next door neighbor to see if she has any trapdoor or any way of accessing the roof. She does. We live in a row of houses connected by the sides. They were all built in the same year and are all completely identical to one another. When Cole arrives home, I tell him all that's happened, and he tells me that before he left for the field, he was sitting in his friend's car and they were talking about leaving and coming home because they weren't busy. Then all of a sudden, they hear a lady's voice right between them say, "If you leave, you'll get in trouble." They checked the whole car and everywhere outside, and no one was around. Fast forward to Tuesday, July 24th. I was preparing for dinner and I was washing my hands. I was looking directly out my kitchen window, admiring the trees, when I see a black figure shaped like a person run in front of the window. I didn't see out of the corner of my eye. I was looking straight ahead. It couldn't have been my neighbors because the figure was completely black and at least 7 feet tall. I live next to ladies who are fairly short. Lastly, I should note that when I looked up information on my neighborhood and its history, the first thing to come up was that it was built on top of a World War I graveyard. Also, I found several other stories throughout the years since my neighborhood has been built of other people seeing things and their houses being haunted. Yeah, your house is haunted if it's built on a graveyard. I have no doubt in my mind that that's what it is. Thank you so much, Shay, for sharing that story with me. I have not read that one yet, and so that was extremely interesting and extremely creepy, and you've had so much happen to you in that house, and that's freaking crazy. At least nothing's being threatening to you, but it is a little worrisome that they're like taking the form of your children and like walking around your house. I don't like that. So those are all the stories I've picked out for today. Thank you so much to you three for sending me your stories, and everyone else who has sent me stories so far. I will get to them as soon as I can. But yeah, other than that, that's really all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing a few more stories. All right, I'm gonna go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye everybody.